Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Now, if you're interested in any kind of filmmaking, whether it would be with drone, cameras, camcorder or action cams, then you're in the right place. We're going to bring you along on a hike with us today, giving you tips and tricks on how you can improve your videos. Now, this week we're heading back again to the forest. I know this has been 3 times on the trot. I promise next week we'll go somewhere else, but there's a particular lane that I've never been down and I'm excited to see what's down there. And in this video, we're going to be looking at how to control your aperture and ISO to get the settings and the video you require. So it's probably about a 3-mile walk there. So we better start heading off and getting some video clips. Let's head on out. So the temperature today is about +4 degrees. We've had a lot of rain over the last few days, so no doubt it's going to be extremely muddy underfoot. Let's see how we get on. Okay, so we've just entered the forest. The sun's coming through the trees. I found this nice little setting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start setting the camera up behind me and dialing in them settings, the aperture and ISO in particular, with a quick look at shutter speed and why we don't need to alter that too much. But I'm going to run you through it all now so you have an understanding of it, and then you can go out and try this yourself. Okay, so we've got the camera set up on a tripod. We've got our shutter speed at 1/60th at the minute, our aperture at f/22. Now, meter reading, this is the camera telling us what it thinks if the image is correctly exposed or not. At the minute it's saying it's -2, meaning the image is too dark, which is evident on the screen. And we've got an ISO of 1000. As you can see, that's the shot we're going for. And that's the shot we're getting at the minute, way too dark. So what we're going to do is dial this in now. Now, if you've not seen my manual settings video on setting up cameras, I recommend watching that. I'll link it up here. And that goes into a lot more detail, but I'm just going to explain now how we dial this in for this particular setting. This will give us a base setting as we continue our walk through the forest, and we only have to then alter the settings a little bit to our own personal taste as we progress. Now, we know that our shutter speed has to be doubled out of our recording frame rate to get the most natural looking motion blur. So our shutter speed should be pretty much locked off at that, like I say, double your recording frame rate. I'm currently recording at 30 frames per second, so my shutter speed is 1/60th, so we don't have to touch that. Next, what I like to do is work with the ISO. Now, the higher we go on the ISO number, the more digital noise we're introducing to the image. So what I like to do is lower this down to the lowest number on the camera. In this instance, it's 100. There we go. Still, the image is too dark. But now we can start to adjust our aperture and watch what happens to the image. As we start to lower this, we're starting to see it coming into focus. And there we go. Now, we're still too dark at the minute. We're at f4. The meter reading is telling us we're too dark, and our ISO is at the minimum it can go. So we have got an image on the screen now, and it's better than what it was. So let's really start dialing this in. Now, your aperture controls the depth of field of what's in focus. Now, believe it or not, you can get everything in focus, even at f4. But what I like to do, just to be sure, I'm going to raise this up to about f7.1. And then all I'm going to do is use the ISO to dial in the image until I think it's the correct exposure on the screen, and or my meter reading says we're at 0. So it's -3, let's just go a little bit higher, and there we go. So at the minute, with an ISO of 800, an aperture of 7.1, we're getting the perfect exposure for this shot, or what the camera thinks is for this shot. Now, I'm a little bit concerned about the ISO being so high. It may start to introduce some digital noise. So I'm just going to lower our ISO just to about 500, and then lower the aperture to 6.3. And there we go. So now we're going to introduce less digital noise into our image. f6.3 is still good enough. And now we can take the shot. Yeah, I'm quite happy with how this shot turned out actually. I really like the sun coming through the trees. Nice contrast there, and yeah, everything appears to be exposed correctly with our settings. I'm walking through the trees just to give everything a sense of scale. It also adds a bit of movement into what would be a very still image. Not a bad start to the day. come across our second shot of the day. This is it down this track. It looks really nice. Now we've got the settings dialed in from our previous clip. Hopefully you can see them there. We've still got our shutter speed at 1/60th, aperture at 6.3, ISO 500. Now meter reading is saying we're overexposed. Even though the image is looking not too bad, I'm going to trust the camera in this instance, and I'm going to lower that ISO to get it back down to 0. We can leave the aperture at 6.3. Now I'm going to just zoom in a little bit here and get it set up how I want it. Yeah, I really like how this one's turned out. I really like the corridor effect of the trees there and me walking through the middle. We could also get the opportunity to cool it down in post. Let me just apply that now. There we go. So I've desaturated it and cooled it down a little bit, and I really like that look. What do you think to it? So what we are actually doing is setting our aperture and ISO to take into account the lighting in the environment we're filming for. Now, because we're filming in natural sunlight, because this is always changing, we have to always be changing our settings. And that's all it is really. So let's crack on and see what else we can find. Whenever I go on these walks, I always get distracted. As you're going to see in the next section, I get distracted by what can be only called as a puddle. I'll leave it in though, just to show you guys how we can get a good shot out of really anything. So I've just come across this little stream here, and I'm going to show you something really important. Let me just show you this. Now this stream looks pretty naff, doesn't it? There's not a lot going on really. There's a bit of rubbish in the way over there. If you can see it, there's a bit of rubbish in there. But I'm just going to show you how we can make even the most boring shot look pretty good. And that's just by walking around this little stream and trying to find different angles. Come with me and I'll show you what I mean. Yep, this little puddle has distracted me. So we're at the other end of the stream, no more than 20 meters away from where I just showed you, but look at the difference. Now the action cam is quite a wide lens camera. I think it's about a 12mm. Before you zoom in with our Sony camera in this area here, get it all composed correctly, I'll show you what this looks like. This will look pretty stunning. Okay, maybe not stunning, but we've managed to turn a boring puddle into something that looks half decent. So always be willing to look for different angles. You never know what you can find. Anyway, let's continue walking and finding new locations we can film and show you more about aperture and ISO. If you do have any questions, comment below, I do read them, and if you're enjoying this content, why not subscribe to the channel? The through the gate shot, every video's got to have one of them, ain't it? Only just bloody fitted through that. So I've just come across this really dark piece of forest. This is a great example of showing you how to control the aperture and ISO when it comes to dark settings. It'll give us a good contrast between the light areas of the forest and the dark areas and show you the settings on this. So let's find a composition and see what the settings are. Okay, so this is the composition that I've set with. As you can see, we're way too dark on our monitor here. I don't know why our shutter speed has changed, but let's raise that up to double our recording frame rate. Because I'm recording at 30 frames per second, we know that that should be locked off at 1/60th. Now, because we're in quite a dark area, we're going to have to lower our aperture. I know that instantly. We've got our ISO at 100. We're going to keep it there at the minute and just lower our aperture and see if we can get it low enough. And there we go, we can't, we're still underexposed. We're still -2 on the meter reading of the camera. We're at f4, ISO 100. So now all we can do is raise our ISO until we get the correct exposure. This is the lowest, f4 is the lowest aperture we can go on this lens. And we're at ISO 800 at the minute. And we're slightly overexposed, so we can lower it just a little bit. See if we can get away with 500, and there we go. There's the correct exposure for this quite dark piece of woodland here. So I've got it all set up now, ready for the shot. I'm going to walk through the shot, through the trees, and yeah, it'll give a good contrast. And have a look at these settings. If you just jump back in the video and have a look at one of the first couple of shots we got when the sun was really out and compare it to these settings. Let's see how this one turned out. So on this particular video clip here, we've had to raise our ISO, but also open the aperture even more to make sure we get enough light into the camera. What we're trying to do is get it exposed correctly, but also maintain the highest quality we can. Well, a lane that I'd never been down turned out to be really disappointing. All it done was led me out the forest and into open fields. But instead of letting the opportunity go to waste, I decided to get the drone out and just send it up and show you where I'd been walking through in the forest in general. I know a lot of my subscribers like their drone footage, so I won't let this opportunity go to waste. Whenever I can, I'll get the drone up. Remember also, all the tips and tricks I've shared with you in this video also apply to your drone footage also. I'll just be quiet for once and let you enjoy the view. Okay everyone, that's going to bring this episode to an end. I hope you got something from it. Don't be scared of going into manual mode and adjusting them settings. I remember when I first started using manual mode, I was scared I was going to change a setting that would break the camera. These manual settings are in your camera for you to adjust and to play with. So don't matter where you are, go in your kitchen, go in your garden, find a subject and just mess around with them. That's the only way you're going to learn how to use them really. I want to say also that the trail that I just walked down, unfortunately it didn't yield much results. So next week there probably won't be a cinematic. I don't think I caught enough. So we'll probably do another vlog next week, somewhere completely different. It's not the woods or forest, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. And then we'll probably release a cinematic after that. Any questions or comments, post below, and I do read them all, I promise you. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button for me. It really boosts the channel and boosts the views that I can get on this video. But thank you so much for watching. Go out and practice and stay safe. Thank you very much for watching. Catch up soon.
In the next episode, I'll be showing you how to adjust your aperture even if the lighting conditions don't allow for it. So make sure you're subscribed, and thank you once again for watching.